Hi, and welcome to Kumsangpayo Choling, to our Wednesday teachings. Sunday. It's Sunday morning teachings of Jetsunma Ahkon Lhamo. This one is from 1992, and we're really happy to bring it to you. It's entitled, Emptiness and Compassion Are Inseparable. And so it will begin with a 7-line prayer. I hope you enjoy it.
So today I tried to talk to the young people about taking a certain inner posture. And as adults, we're much more complicated than the young people, which is a terrible disadvantage that we have. We're much smarter than them too in terms of experience. And that's another terrible disadvantage. Because we like to make things very complicated. When we think of having courage and of being a warrior, we immediately stand outside of ourselves and think how we should act. We try to put on a costume, really put on a costume, mentally, emotionally, and we generally resort to acting, which is about the worst thing you can do from a spiritual perspective, to fake your way through, or to take a posture of false pridefulness in some regard. From the spiritual point of view, that's like death. It's really the worst thing that one can do. So as adults, we have to come to understand that posture of being a warrior much differently. We have to understand how that could result. What is the cause of that? How that could actually come about. And so we should consider in this way, that in the path that the Buddha has laid out for us, and particularly I'm thinking now of the unique perspective of Vajrayana, as well as in the other forms that the Buddha has taught, one relies on two fundamental truths. And that is the truth of the realization or accomplishment of the realization of emptiness, and the truth of the arising of the Bodhichitta, or compassion. On the path, emptiness and compassion are indistinguishable from one another. And one cannot accomplish the path in an unbalanced way. If one were to meditate only on compassion, without any understanding of emptiness, without any basic fundamental understanding of the view, then one would have a certain tendency toward acting in a certain way. It would be extremely superficial, and it would be different than one's nature, because we have the habit of clinging to ego. We have the habit of clinging to self-nature. And if we were to try to be compassionate without a fundamental understanding of emptiness, it would be like taking that nature and temporarily altering its shape from the assumption of self-nature as being inherently real and the clinging to self-nature. It would be like taking a rubber band and stretching it all the way out, and you could do it. You could do it for a time, but eventually that shape of the initial assumption of the fundamental assumption of self-nature as being inherently real would assert itself, and the rubber band would come back to its natural shape. This is illustrated by the fact that many of us who feel that we are living spiritual lives will decide that we've come to a new insight of kindness or generosity or what have you. And we'll wake up thinking this is going to be the day where we are unflinchingly generous, unflinchingly kind. And that idea usually lasts for maybe 10, 12 minutes at the outside, until the habit of selfishness, even if one is not unkind to anyone else, the habit of self-absorption, self-consideration comes back into play. The habit is so much a part of our mental tapestry that most of us don't even realize that we have it, and that's the real danger. That's the real ignorance that comes with that, is that we are selfish and we are self-absorbed and we don't even know it. We tend to look at the broad view of our lives and we think that we are basically spiritual people and that we are pretty nice, and so we think that we are truly practicing generosity. But if we examined our thoughts and our activities moment by moment, they are not really generous. Our thoughts are very much wrapped around ourselves, and we always think that way. So that shape will reassert itself. What happens looking at a Dharma practitioner on the path who only meditates on generosity without meditating on emptiness, who only tries to accomplish the Bodhicitta, is that that practitioner, after a period of time, will run dry. Now, I can't count how many of my students have had that experience of just running dry, with pure intention, with trying very hard. Simply that, running dry. And they find that they no longer have the strength to go on, they cannot continue, they do not have the wherewithal, neither are they inspired, they simply don't know what to do. And then they become cynical. And this is such a predictable pattern for that type of practitioner that I can with total confidence tell you that should you only arise the Bodhicitta, only meditate on Bodhicitta, that this would be what would happen. With total confidence, I can tell you this. Kindness, generosity, for as much a part of the path, for as much a fundamental part of the path and the view as it is not enough. So, students will run dry. They will not be able to accomplish. They will become cynical. And with that cynicism is a kind of hardness. And at that point, the practitioner has a couple of different choices, and this is where the variety comes in. There are a couple of different choices, and the choices might be something like this. The student, and this is why I'm saying first, this is often the case, the student will begin to play act, to pretend that they are something that they're not, to pretend that this inner dryness isn't happening to them. They will act kind, they will act sweet, they will act as though they understand all of these things. They will act spiritual. They will act like they know very much. Oh, I know very much. I have a great deal of insight into the path. And that acting is such a transgression to our natures that it like immediately lays on something like a callus that makes the mind hard as horn, so thick, so unable to accomplish anything spiritual. And yet the way that they continue to compensate for that pain that they feel is to continue to act, and that callus becomes deeper and deeper. And at some point, the student thinks that there's no way out. Like having a callus, there's no way to feel the skin, no way to touch, no way. And so the student just gives up. They find an excuse. Oh, I don't like this kind of thing, or I'm finished with this, or maybe I want to go study something else, like that. And they escape. But they take with them that callus and that hardness and that deadness. And another thing that a student might do is they might begin to become like cynical or disliking of themselves, unaccepting of themselves, and pull into a kind of sadness or depression, kind of hopelessness. And the way that they usually deal with that is to think, oh, this doesn't work. This path doesn't work. And of course that isn't the case at all. If one truly applies the technology has in the past and does continue to work perfectly. But it's very hard to look at ourselves and say that I have not really accomplished this, and what is the reason? Much easier to say, this does not work. There are many different routes that one can take. One can become frightened. One can build up an entire spiritual scenario, and I've seen this happen too, where a person will become very excited about the path and try to dive in very quickly, and they'll, yes, generosity, loving kindness, yes, I can see it, I'm on fire with it, and therefore I'm really going to hold on to it, I'm really going to practice it. And so they become very much on fire with that. And then what happens at that point is they just kind of burn really hot and fast, and having no foundation with which to catch the compassion, no way to hold it, to anchor it, no perception of the primordial view of emptiness to anchor it with or to catch it with. They simply exhaust their supply of merit or karma that empowers them or enables them to actually practice this kindness. And they burn out very quickly. I've seen that very often, much too often. Much too often. A story that I've told before that I would like to tell again because it's such a remarkable story is how amazingly a student's karma can ripen, how awesome this event can be, how visible a display, how remarkable this can actually be. I had it happen once where I was in the gift store thumbing through a new selection of earrings and crystals, which I am wont to do on a regular basis. And suddenly this student came in that had never been to the temple before, and she was blown away. She'd never been here before, and she was blown away. She was looking at all the images and everything, and she was like, you could tell she was reeling inside. Something had struck her to the core. And she didn't really know how to act about it. And then she didn't even know that I was the teacher. She hadn't had a tour or anything. She walks into the gift store, and she knew me immediately. She knew me immediately. Remarkable. It almost makes you believe instantly when you see a display like that in the Buddha's teaching about rebirth and how one lives more than one lifetime. She knew me immediately. Her clarity at that moment was like a window in time. Everything just lined up, just lined up perfectly. And she knew me. And she did. And she just, without any contrivance or any acting, her jaw just dropped, and she immediately started crying and said, oh, it's you. Just like that. And then she said, I just don't know what I'm doing here. I don't really know what's going on. And she started to do 3 perfect prostrations. And in her life, she had never seen one before. After she finished doing that, she said, I don't know what it is that I'm doing. I don't know what this means. But I feel like I know you. I feel like this is... And she was stunned. She didn't know what to do, and she was making homage like that. But she did 3 flawless prostrations, and she had never seen one performed. Never done one before. And so it was an amazing thing. And she said, well, what is this all about? What's happening here? And so I began to talk to her. I tried to talk to her in such a way where I could kind of tweak her knobs inside. Make her remember even more. Try to introduce her. Try to hook her so that she could be very secured. Very much secured. So that she would not lose what she had just found. So that she would be capable of doing what she really felt to do in her heart. So I began to talk to her about the path, about what Buddhism is really about. And it seemed as though she knew. She was like, yes, I know this from somewhere. I know this. And it was very, very moving to her. And she went around and talked with everybody and was blown away, blown to tears, had an amazing experience, and kept talking about how all she wanted to do was to practice that kind of kindness, that she knew that was what it was all about. She really wanted to practice that kind of kindness. And kindness was the thing. She hooked right into bodhicitta, right into kindness, right into generosity. Yes, I've always wanted to benefit sentient beings. Yes, I've always wanted to benefit sentient beings. She came to the center a couple of times after that, and then she was gone. Never saw her again. And I understand that the last time that she came, she actually was unable to talk about how this thing had opened her up. And she'd felt these windows line up where she knew, she recognized something that she had accomplished in the past, a relationship that she'd had with her teacher in the past. Enough to know what to do. And then suddenly, those windows moved apart, and it was like this. She couldn't see any longer. What an awesome display of an instantaneous, spontaneous ripening of a student's karma. And yet how tragic that in that ripening there was not the time to establish herself in these two gatherings. The gathering of the awareness of emptiness and of the arising of the bodhicitta. If only she had had some time to be able to establish herself in that regard. Excuse me, I'm losing an earring. You can edit this from the tape. If only she'd had some time to gather her practice together. But her karma didn't ripen that way. She flew off on this understanding of merit, of compassion, on this great emotional arising. And then, yet there was no understanding of emptiness. What an amazing and remarkable consideration. Now that's a really extreme case. That's only happened to me once, where a student has remembered so much and lost it so quickly. Only once. But I have seen that in much longer, drawn-out versions over years, sometimes over weeks, sometimes over months, and sometimes over years, where students will experience that kind of lining up and then lose it. And it's because they have not understood the need to accomplish both emptiness and bodhicitta. Bodhicitta cannot be understood as a thing or a quality, because in its fundamental nature it is indistinguishable from emptiness. You know how sometimes you'll see in the posters and tankas that you see around the room, for instance, that there. You'll see the picture of Lama and consort, or Daka and Dakini. The picture that design is called Yabyum. It means the coming together, union, non-duality in a consort fashion. Well, what are those pictures meaning? Are they dirty pictures? Do you think we have dirty pictures hanging up here? Not at all. They have nothing to do with that. Nothing at all. They actually are an indication of the non-duality of emptiness and bodhicitta. They are a display of one's own primordial wisdom nature. The bodhicitta in its nature, while it is seen in the world as compassionate display and can be labeled as a thing, in its fundamental nature is indistinguishable from emptiness. Therefore, if one were to act in the world like a kind person, if one were to don the clothing, put on the clothing of generosity and kindness, one would not truly be practicing bodhicitta from its deepest, most fundamental point of view. That is not really it. deeply understood, the bodhicitta is the primordial nature. That, of course, means that the bodhicitta is your nature, that it is indistinguishable from emptiness. When a person in the world without an understanding of emptiness tries to arise the bodhicitta, to give rise to the bodhicitta, tries to be kind, tries to be sweet, tries to be good, tries to be generous, tries to be something, that trying to be arises from the fundamental assumption of self-nature being inherently real. I am trying to be something. I am kind. I will be like that. You can hear the self in that, can't you? You can hear the self in that. But when one gives rise to the bodhicitta with a full understanding of emptiness, that is a completely different operation. In that, if one meditates on emptiness, if one truly accomplishes the understanding of no self, of freedom from clinging to the idea of self, if one truly accomplishes that, and from that meditation on selflessness, from that meditation on no-thingness, from that meditation on shunyata, meditating on the primordial empty nature of all it is, of form and formless, from that meditation on the non-dual nature, one gives rise naturally to the display of that nature, because in that nature is all display, naturally and spontaneously. The display of a nature not based in the idea of self or ego clinging is the bodhicitta. And if one were to understand the nature, one would see that movement or display or dance and emptiness or silence or stillness are indistinguishable from one another. When one realizes the nature, one comes to the conclusion which cannot be verbalized. One cannot, with one's intellect, figure this out, ever. No way to do that. Just in the same way that one cannot clap with one hand. One realizes, upon understanding that nature, one comes to the understanding that nature is neither form nor formless, both form and formless, neither movement nor stillness, both movement and stillness, neither coming nor going, both coming and going. Meditating upon that nature, one comes to a conclusion that one is not capable of coming to. And that conclusion can only be arrived at by spontaneously arising and instantly liberated point of view. One can only come to that conclusion through a mind that is completely stable, able to abide calmly, without distinction, without assumption of any kind. A mind that is spacious, a mind that is absorbed, but on what? Non-specific absorption. We can't understand non-specific absorption with our minds, can we? Absorption means absorption. On what? And yet this meditation cannot be arrived at in that way. This accomplishment cannot be gathered in that way. Our nature in its fundamental state is more like luminosity, sheer luminosity, more like innate wakefulness, whereas we are specifically aware, aren't we? We're aware of this, and we're aware of that, and we're aware of me, and we're aware of you. We're aware of feeling, and we're aware of the teaching on non-specific awareness, and we're aware that we have the idea that we understand it when we don't. That idea we have, and that is specific awareness. But this fundamental nature is a conclusion that one cannot arrive at. One cannot arrive at. Yet it is one's fundamental nature. We cannot imagine non-specific awareness. We cannot imagine innate wakefulness. We cannot imagine uncontrived, luminous awareness, non-specific. We think that we can imagine that, but upon imagining it for one moment, we have lost it. Therefore, impossible. So the path gives us this directive of purifying this dualistic perception by accomplishing the bodhicitta, which is a stronger consideration for the welfare of all sentient beings than for our own. But we are advised to never try to accomplish that kind of practice without also meditating on emptiness. They must be together. In our practice, we have to marry them together, like the picture of Lama and consort. But in our nature, it is already so. In our practice, we have to purify that perception so that the awareness of that state, of that spontaneous natural state that cannot be striven toward, not sure what the right word is, that has to be given rise to in a natural way. And of course we have to pacify or diminish the habit of self-absorption through generosity. And we must begin to give rise to maintain the view of emptiness, also as an antidote to the assumption of self-nature. What happens to the student that meditates on emptiness and not on bodhicitta? Well, something that may actually in some ways be worse. And that is that the student will attain something that looks a lot like self-mastery. If we meditate on emptiness, we can free ourselves from many forms of desire. If we meditate on the emptiness of this glass of water long enough, no matter how thirsty we get, if our meditation is powerful enough, we won't want it. We can pacify the desire for this glass of water. If we meditate on the emptiness of anything that we want, relationships, money, food, sex, anything, we can make ourselves not want it. If we meditate on the emptiness of self, we can develop a state of mind that is pacified, free of inflammation, free of the aggravation and inflammation associated with the desire that results from ego clinging. So we can do that. And then what have we? We have someone who knows that their nature is empty, sitting on a rock somewhere, meditating on emptiness. We have a kind of self-mastery. And should that person accomplish self-mastery to the point that they have pacified all desire and are not thereby bound to return to cyclic existence, then what do we have? We have all sentient beings still revolving hopelessly and helplessly in cyclic existence. And we have no true understanding of emptiness. Because to liberate oneself without liberating all sentient beings is to distinguish self from other. And it simply doesn't work. In our nature, we are indistinguishable, one from the other. How would it be possible? How is it possible for one to attain liberation without the others? Even those who have become Buddhas, I think of Lord Buddha Amitabha, I think of Lord Buddha Shakyamuni, any of the Buddhas, those who have actually not bodhisattvahood, we already know what they're doing. They are returning again and again to benefit sentient beings. But those who have attained Buddhahood, what are the stories with them? I think about Lord Buddha Amitabha, who is the Buddha of the Pure Land of the West, Dewa-chen. His prayer, as he was an aspiring, awakening one, was that everyone who even thought of him for a moment at the time of their death, this was his heartfelt prayer practiced over millennium, that everyone who thought of him at the time of their death with devotion, with hope, anyone who could pronounce his name, that they would be reborn with him in Dewa-chen. And so he established, through the power of the force of his realization, a Buddha field of realization, through the very force or tapestry of his realization, that one could relatively easily attain to. Compared to what it takes to go the route that Lord Buddha Shakyamuni went. It is much easier to be reborn into the mind and heart of Amitabha due to his great compassion. So he has not left sentient beings. He has not abandoned the world. Visible proof of that is that we here practice Amitabha practice. We learn how to release our consciousness into the heart of Amitabha when we practice Poa. Visible proof of his great compassion and his miraculous display in the world. So to truly attain Buddhahood, there must be an indistinguishable connection or non-duality of emptiness and bodhicitta. The Buddhas continue to appear in the world as their miraculous intention. They continue to display the opportunity to achieve liberation for the benefit of sentient beings. If we were to try to attain self-liberation without benefiting others, we would not have understood the path. We could not have understood that in our nature we are the same. When a bodhisattva decides to practice compassion, it isn't because they're nice guys. Did you know that? It's because it is the way. It is the way. It is the way to accomplish. In practicing compassion, one is meditating on the nature. I know that it would not be possible for me to truly leave the world while any of you are still here. Because we are the same. Not because I'm a good person, but because we are the same. In my nature, I cannot be separated from you. How could I think that I could be somewhere else and you are here? And so as a bodhisattva, I take the vow, as do all bodhisattvas, to return again and again and again under the conditions associated with cyclic existence, that is to say birth and death, to return again and again and again with big net until all the realms of cyclic existence are totally emptied. And the prayer is to be the last. That's my prayer, to be the last. I want to be the last one out of here. It's not that I'm so crazy about this place, believe me. But it's because what else would I do? What would you do if you knew that you were the same as me and I was still here without you? What would you do? And so that's the truth of the path. Emptiness and compassion, inseparable. Inseparable from one another. Cannot be distinguished between. In our practice, we have to marry them. But in our nature, we are joined in that way. It is so. No need to make it so. It is so. So that's what I was trying to explain to the children this morning. My best friends are warriors because they know the truth of the path. And the result of practice like that is an unquenchable thirst. Unquenchable thirst. Irresistible, unquenchable thirst. An edge that you can't slide off of. Something that you can't be comfortable living with until all sentient beings are free and have realized their nature. So that's the bottom line. As a practitioner, as a new practitioner, or as a practitioner that has been practicing for some time, don't make the mistake of thinking that of the two, Bodhicitta is the most attractive. Or that what you really want to do is set yourself up on a mountain somewhere where things are very dramatic and you can meditate on emptiness all by yourself. Wouldn't that be slick? Taking mental photographs of yourself all the time. Click, click, wow! On a mountain yet. Can you believe it? That's a joke. You're not practicing. Putting on a show. Leave that to Steven Spielberg. Although I guess I have to come back and liberate him, don't I? Anyway, thank you very much for being here today.
So thank you all very much for joining us today for this teaching. We're always glad to have you here with us. we've had kind of an engaged audience, which is really wonderful. So let's see, here at KPC, we are still doing almost everything. Well, we do just about everything online anyway, but we are open in the prayer room on weekends from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. And that is, come and come masked and, sit and enjoy the meditative awareness. Then on the rest of the time, we are open outside, which is from dawn to dusk, and we have lots to do outside. We have lots of acres of meditation grounds with stupas and trails and places to, just really get in touch with nature and meditate. We also have some fabulous farm animals that will, just delight you with their love. And we invite you to enjoy them. So, as well as rescued parrots and gardens and just, a lot of outdoor refreshment for you. That's open all the dawn to dusk every day. So please feel free to come and to enjoy all of that and make yourselves at home. We really look forward to seeing you. We're always happy to have you here, and we look forward to being open again all the time, but not quite yet because we want to keep you safe. So the teachings are shown on Wednesday evenings at 7:30 and on Sunday mornings at 11 on YouTube, and they're also archived, so you can go back and listen if for some reason we're having a practice or for some other reason we're not showing something. You have something you can go see in any case, just pick one. In addition, Attira Zioli teaches on the second and fourth Sundays. This month it will be next Sunday, and then 2 after that. Her teachings are at 5 p.m. on Sundays, and they are also fabulous and also archived. So you can also go check those out on our YouTube channel, which I'm guessing you're on if you're listening to this. It's Kunsang Payo Choling on youtube.com. Should you decide you wanted to make an offering to Jetsunma on the occasion of receiving a teaching, you can do so at her PayPal account, which is jetsumagift@gmail.com. Making an offering to the teacher is one way of just having an exchange, and that helps deepen the relationship and as a result, the understanding of the teaching. So it's of benefit in many ways. Let me see. Also, online, we have a daily Medicine Buddha, easy for me to say, Medicine Buddha practice, which is on Facebook Live, and that is at 7 p.m. every night. It's a very short English practice that was offered up by Jetsunma specifically for the COVID situation, where so many, are very sick and dying. Horrible deaths, and to help with that and to do our part to help alleviate that suffering, she created this very short English practice, which we do on Wednesdays. Every day at 7, Facebook Live. Just thinking what else. We have so many other practices daily, and quite a calendar of events. If you're interested in Vajrayana practice, please, look on our website, tara.org, and check out the events page, which has a calendar. You can click on the event that you're interested in, and it will give you where it is and how to join it and what the practice is. You can link to all of that. So we invite you to do so. In any case, until next time, please stay safe. Hope you're enjoying yourselves as much as possible, and taking care of as many as you can. So thank you. And we really, really, truly appreciate you. Have a wonderful, wonderful week or few days until Wednesday. Take care.